Rattan Keswani is the Deputy Managing Director of Lemon Tree Hotels Limited and co-promoter and director of Carnation Hotels, spanning a tenure of 10 years. Having worked 31 years with Oberoi Hotels and Resorts, he was last president Trident Hotels from 2008 to 2012. He oversaw the partnership with Hilton Hotels Worldwide for 4 years and then set up the Trident Hotels brand and the Privilege Club. His key specializations are hotel operations, with additional expertise in design, branding, marketing, PR, and communications. Mr. Rattan is also an active trainer and mentor to senior executives across industries. An accredited faculty for ISH, IIHM, and OSHM, he takes sessions for these institutes' senior cohorts on leadership, HR, and marketing. Now independent advisor and consultant he recently authored a book, Check In, Never Check Out. I now invite Mr. Keswani for his keynote.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. At the onset, it's an absolute honor to be here in Chandigarh. Thank you to Vibrant for inviting me to address you. And the reason why I find it to be a double honor is my life in mature form actually started in the city many years ago. So as one would say, or a mother would say, you moved from being a child to a man in Chandigarh. And then when you moved into hospitality with Oberoi, I think they made you a bit of a gentleman. So it's great to be back in Chandigarh. I finished my schooling here. I did my college here. I'm a graduate from DME College and Punjab University. So thank you for being here. The reason why the organizers want me to come here was to introduce my book to you, which is called Check In and Never Check Out. But I don't want to push and market the book. Let me just say, what is the reason why I wrote this book? A lot of the people here are my age group, so people ask where the title come from. So if you're followers of the band called Eagles has a song called Hotel California. And in the song, there is a paragraph that says, you can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. And the reason I chose that, I was humming that song one night, and I was searching for a title, it's because I joined hospitality by force, by default. I had no intention of doing so. But I realized that it's even after I left it on a sabbatical, it kind of seeps into you and never leaves you. So while I've checked out from the business, I don't think the business will ever check out from me. It's a bit of an episodic journey of my life of 42 years in hospitality. I spent 30 odd years with Oberoi Hotels and 10 with Lemon Tree Hotels. And I guess for some of you written books or think about writing a book, many years ago the thought came to me saying I must write. And the reason was you want to complain about life. You want to complain about your bosses. You want to complain as when you're young about the environment. You become a bit of a rebel of the environment. You want to talk about it. And there's nobody to listen to you, so you want to write about it. But each time I moved 9 cities, different positions, the stories changed. The frustrations or the enjoyments changed. The people changed, their nationalities changed, their backgrounds changed. And I realized that the stories were not constant. I wasn't constant. I was changing and manifesting in different ways and becoming a different personality many times. And I was becoming a bit of a different personality because the environment was changing. And so any of my learnings that I would teach or talk about were relevant for the past, but were not relevant in the present. And I just want to hope that they would be relevant to their future. And lots of times they would come and tell me, say, well, boss, that doesn't work for us. Today everybody complains about, the Gen Z, Gen X, it's a hell of a problem. I'm sure our grandparents complain about our parents and our parents complain about us. So that's I too will always remain. And I found that the only answer lay in listening to them. There's a distinct difference as a mentor and a celebrated boss of mine, Mr. P.R.S. Oberoi, used to say, learn to listen, not just hear. There's a subtle difference between the two. Absorb. And therefore then respond. Don't be in a rush. And today's generation, we want to push everything and you push the buttons very quickly. And in the various environments that I worked in, I decided, some passed by force, that I must open up my listening and hearing ability and then try and motivate them or conjure up a management style that more suited them. And if it suited them, they would be willing to open themselves out to me if I open myself out to them. And therefore it became a healthy relationship of engagement. And the methods I used, the processes that I taught, the advice I gave, kept getting molded in a different manner. So the book is got episodes of all the places that I worked in. I worked abroad, I worked in India, I worked as a junior assistant manager for my training. I was the president of the company and then deputy MD in Lemon Tree Hotels. And each of them has been woven into an episode. The young folks that contacted me, I think they read some parts of the book or seen some podcasts and interviews. So there's a couple of episodes which talks about my so-called interaction with ghosts. Most people have ghost stories of their own. And then it talks about some of the episodes which cover my tenure in certain places the General Saab will identify with. I was posted in Saudi Arabia just at the last 7-8 months of the Gulf War. I was in Colombo in the height of insurgencies and bomb blasts used to happen. And then I had the misfortune, I would say, of reaching the hotel that I was responsible as a company head from. During 26/11, I spent 60 hours inside the hotel. And I said, okay, we'll talk about that because there's some part of the book, but that's not what the book is all about. And ladies and gentlemen, what I'd like to say to you is, everybody talks about opportunity. We are in a country that says diversity is our biggest advantage. But all I'd say to you is diversity is also our biggest disadvantage, and that is proven very clearly during the recent elections. We treat it too unidimensionally, but we don't understand there's much more than meets the eye. And why am I going to talk about it before the rest of the book is, the gentleman before me said the only trade that has emotional labor is the acting trade, and I'd say the other trade that has a huge amount of emotional labor investment is the hospitality industry. We are on the stage all the time with different kind of guests who treat us well, we treat them well, but we leave behind memories in every interaction that we create. And the other unique thing that is Indian, I think, is that we don't celebrate the people who work with us in my industry. It's a criminal thought that we don't do too much. So let me paint a picture for you. In the older hotel that I worked with, I did 3 stints in different categories in those hotels. Assistant manager, departmental head, senior vice president. But imagine that the hotels came up back in the year 1965. What was then the Oberoi Intercontinental, for some of you who remember the hotel, or the Sheraton Towers in Mumbai. Oberoi Intercontinental built in 1965. The hotel in Nariman Point was built in 1971. Where did the people come from? They came from basic backgrounds around the area of both the cities. They had no idea what hotels is all about. People mostly don't, even right now. They came from those social different backgrounds. They came from different education or lack of education backgrounds. They had their own misnomers about how life has to work. But you know something, after a point, the trade, the company became their theater. And there are multiple theaters that are being played. The all-day diner, the banquets, the kitchen, the purchasing, the front desk, the security, and they're dealing with the characters playing the book are the same, but the characters that they're touching, feeling, customizing are varying in their thousands. They come from different backgrounds, they come from different education, they come from social diversities and miscalculations and misunderstandings. But you know something, after a point in time, they deliver pleasure. They leave you with a memory which are called wow moments, and each one of them does. And the book is a lot about why do people do what they don't, what they never knew what to do. But why do people do in certain crisis and adversity something that they're not paid to do? What makes them tick? So in each of the episodes, there's a little bit of interaction around what I believe makes people tick, and where I believe all of us as leaders and managers and human beings fail to pick the common themes of, which is of caring not just for yourself, but caring for your internal customer, opening yourself out to them, and the needs of each person, just like the needs of a customer like yourself. Today's talk about customization. Imagine dealing with the customization of the experience of interaction that a 48-year-old person who first started a colleague in Mumbai, but is now a supervisor dealing with the best CEOs. They think differently, and each of them therefore needs to be treated differently, and you need to understand them. And if you understand them well, it is unique about how much of magic gets created by you, and they create the magic. It's only because you give them time to listen. You listen to them, you hear them, and then you manage them in the way that makes them most comfortable. Imagine in a hotel you have 23, 24-year-old people, you have 35, 38-year-old people, some have in-law problems, dad problem, husband problem. They cook at 5 o'clock in the morning, take a train for 2 hours, work the same back-breaking task for 30, odd years, go back 2 hours and then cook for their family again. With all of that, they still, the moment they open the door and the venue of where they are working, which is their theater, something ticks. And all they are thinking about is how to create that wow moment for the customer. And each wow moment, you'll be surprised how much of pride it creates for them. It's more than the rewards that you create for them. They actually measure the number of smiles they got and how happy they felt. And if we could all bring that to our way of living, our way of interacting with people, I think you will find magic happening all around you, and I would really urge you to do that. The first part I spoke about was diversity, and we talk about it a lot, but I would ask you to ask yourself, do I actually accept diversity? Whether it's religious, social, caste. Because we've all been governed and brought in by our parents and grandparents in a particular manner. And our attitude and aptitudes are actually ingrained. And they define the mistakes that we make. And what is needed by us to do, we somehow hold ourselves from doing away from that. I've become a bit of a philosopher, an evangelist, and somewhat of a vigilante after working with these two companies. But I'll just bring in very quickly my experience with Lemon Tree, where I learned the business modeling of hospitality more than the luxury modeling of hospitality. But I was exposed to dealing with diversity because we used to be the largest employers of differently abled people. We started off with speech and hearing, moved on to intellectuals, moved on to physical disability, and these were all regular members of staff. The book's royalty also goes to an NGO called Muskan that specializes in this medium. And we started to try and work a little bit with the LGBTQI community. And there are two things that we realized. If I was to ask you a question saying, how many differently able people do you believe are in the world as a percentage? Would you know the answer? It's more than 10 to 12%. Would you know how many people of the LGBTQI community are part of the population of the world? And the answer is about the same. What might surprise you again is within these communities are the most creative, the most excitable, the most enjoyable people that you can work with, who will bring joy and newness into your business that we tend not to want to attach because we've got a basic mindset against that. We all in industry complain, log nahi milte, training nahi hai. We learned a lot from the educations today. And I'll ask you the last question saying, how much time do you invest in actually training the people who work with you or wish to work with you without these mental hang-ups? Because these communities are a large percentage that can bring you joy, but you have a hang-up of not wanting to work with them. My only request to all of you would be to open up your heart afresh today and forget whatever you've learned and what's in your heart and mind, and look at it logically from the concept of diversity. And you'll find some echoes of it in wherever I be. I'm sure he met me outside, the person who'd be in touch with me. He said, "Sir, we'd like you to talk about the ghost stories of 26/11 and the other crisis." And I will bring back the question on both the parts to say, why do people do what they do when they do? I take, be a little bit of I take credit away from the armed forces. I want to join the armed forces, General Saab, many years ago, till I met Air Marshal Lal, and he said, "You don't have a future in US specs," and that killed one dream. But our industry is a lot like the armed forces. There's a spick and span of the personality, the uniform, and what you get taught. You become a different person, and your personality keeps improving, as it does for most people in the armed forces. But different from the armed forces, the people who work in the hospitality industry, really don't go with patriotism in their mind when they join hotels. But when they come alive and give all they have in certain crises, my question always to myself was, why do they do what they do? What makes them tick? So the ghost story, a little bit of fun on the aside, but we'll go a little bit to Saudi Arabia, the Gulf War, the scuds flying behind the hotel, in front of the hotel. But everybody came to work. We used to cater as caterers to the army camps on the border of the eastern periphery, the border of Iraq. And you saw these ladies and gentlemen from the US Army, ladies and gentlemen, ladies in Saudi Arabia, doing all kinds of work together. And when on a furlough, they would come into our hotel because we were also base camp and base headquarters for them. And the team worked without fear. Of course they had fear, but they did